What's up, fellow YouTubers? Hey, I'm bringing you another deck for Magic the Gathering Online. This one is really interesting and it's pretty fun to play. It's actually comprised of 44 lands. Yeah, 44 out of the 60 cards are lands, and 16 of them are spells. Only 4 of them actually being creatures. So let me briefly review this deck and then show you what it's like in action. There are a few basic lands that we need, and then there are some other special lands that will either tap for 2 different colors of mana, or I've got a few shock lands in there. And then also some of the lands you can actually tap and add so much mana, and it will become a creature for that particular turn. So if your typical win condition isn't happening for you, then you can use those lands to do damage as well. And then Kessig Wolf Run, of course, to add trample and so many power to a particular creature for that turn. All right, so that's enough with the lands. You could look through the other ones that I have there, or pause this to see exactly what I'm running. This is the budget land deck. There are other lands that you can use that you could put some money into, and what I'm sure would improve the deck that much more. And then let's take a look at the actual spells that I'm using here. I'm running 4 Treasure Hunt. These are really great when you want to get some more cards from your library. What it does is it just allows you to reveal as many cards in your library until you hit a non-land card, and then you put those cards into your hand. So you could either reveal a bunch of lands in order to push Seismic Assault, or you could pick up a Countryside Crusher if that was not going to be your next draw, or get you a Seismic Assault, or get you a Life from the Loam, and hopefully get you a few lands while you're doing it. So that card is terrific in this deck. Life from the Loam, what that does, I'm running 4 of those. What that does is, actually, well, let me tell you what it does, and then I'll tell you how I've been using it. All this does is it'll allow you to get 3 lands from your graveyard, and then the dredge ability, once this card is in your graveyard, at your upkeep on your next turn, you can use dredge 3, which is drawing 3 cards and placing them into your graveyard, and then putting Life from the Loam back into your hand, which you can then cast in order to get those cards out of your graveyard and use them. And so oftentimes I end up with Life from the Loam in my draw, but no lands in my graveyard. And if I'm waiting, on turn 2, I can select land to play so that I could get 1 colorless and 1 green, play Life from the Loam, skip the actual ability of the card, but it ends up in my graveyard, so that on turn 3, on the upkeep of my turn 3, I can activate the dredge 3 instead of drawing from my library, and then it pushes 3 cards to my graveyard, which then I can use Life from the Loam that turn to pull those lands into my hand. So kind of interesting. I mean, I'd rather be using the actual effect of the card, but on turn 2, you may not have anything in your graveyard yet, but this is a way to get cards there. So that's an interesting card. Countryside Crusher, this dude he can become a serious beast. 2 red, which you usually do have on your draw, and then 1 colorless. And what he does is every time, at upkeep, you reveal the top card of your library, and then if it's a land, you put it in your graveyard and do it again. And then when a land is put into your graveyard from anywhere, you put a +1/+1 on Countryside Crusher. So if you can imagine, the idea with this deck with 44 lands is that you get your Countryside Crusher out there, and then at upkeep, you just want to draw into as many lands as you can without hitting a Treasure Hunt, Life from the Loam, or a Seismic Assault. And so sometimes that's the very next card you hit, and it's like, oh, the effect didn't work so well. But I've seen 15 cards come into play without hitting one of those other cards or another Countryside Crusher. And then Seismic Assault. What this does is you cast it for 3 red, and then you put it out there on the battlefield. And then what you could do is discard a land card, and then that deals 2 damage to a creature or a player. So you can use that for control to remove things from the board, especially if they're little 2/2 creatures. Is great for that. 1/1 creatures, I mean, you kind of lose 1 point of damage, but it gets something out of the way if you have to. And then if you have a creature with 3 or 4 or greater toughness, then you're just going to have to spend more land cards to get rid of it if you want to use it for removal of creatures. But then you could also just deal 2 damage right to the player. And so I'll show you how this deck works. If you can get a Seismic Assault and a Countryside Crusher out on the board, and you're building your Countryside Crusher, and you're generating lands through Life from the Loam and Treasure Hunt into your hand, man, that combination is just really hard to deal with. So that's enough of the deck. Let's get into this, and I'll show you how this deck runs. All right, here we go. Let's jump into a game here. This is actually my buddy, and he didn't know I was playing this deck, but we still had some fun with it anyway, and I think this turned out to be a pretty good game. All right, this draw hand is actually looking pretty good. I kept it. I've got some red sources there to get my Seismic Assault out, and I have a Treasure Hunt. So basically all I'm really doing is trying to get 3 red land out there so that I can get the Seismic Assault on the board. It's actually turn 3. That does take a little bit. I mean, in Modern, with it being such a fast format, it's kind of worrisome that my Seismic Assault and my Countryside Crusher both require 3 land. So and I don't have any mana acceleration. And so we're really talking about turn 3 is when you actually start doing something. And as you could tell, my opponent here already has 2 guys attacking on the table. I'm already at 14 on turn 3, on his turn 3. And so this deck can take a minute to get going, but just wait and watch and see what happens here, because once this deck does come alive, it becomes pretty effective, and it's pretty fun to play. My opponent is actually pretty good with this deck, and I've played it against him here in the online version as well as the paper version. All right, so now we have 3 lands that we could tap for red. Here's my Seismic Assault, and I just got rid of, for 2 land cards, got rid of his 2 creatures out there. He plays a Elvish Visionary, which is a 1/1 and allows him to draw a card. Here's his Elvish Mystic. He's trying to ramp up some mana here and have some card advantage, which is how his deck works, getting ready to combo it up. And there's his combo card, and he puts it into play and ramps up some mana for him. And now he's got 4 creatures on the table. And so here's my Treasure Hunt, and it does not much for me. It just gives me another Treasure Hunt, which actually isn't bad, because on the next turn I get to play that. Now he really goes crazy with all these 1 green dorks that he's putting out here. But look at all the creatures he has on the table. Here comes a huge attack. He has 7 creatures on the table. I'm down to 2 life. He's at 20. And, I've got a bunch of land on the table. But, here's the Treasure Hunt. Look at what it does for me. It allows me to have 10 lands in my hand. And this is just one approach that you can use as a win condition. 10 lands in your hand equates to 20 damage. And so I got pretty lucky with that Treasure Hunt, but at the same time, that's why you're running 44 lands in this deck, so that you can actually draw out stuff like that. So Seismic Assault goes in for the win, takes care of business. Really, all my other land was just used to get Seismic Assault on the table, or used to deal 2 damage to his first 2 creatures, and then also the rest to him. So pretty fun deck. I'll do another video that that shows Countryside Crusher and Seismic Assault in play at the same time, and that'll be sweet too. Hope you enjoyed it. See ya.